Greetings from love, lies, and deception. Join us as we examine the tales and mysteries of adultery. My name is Savannah, and I live in a quiet suburb of Seattle. I have a loving husband and a stable job as a psychologist in private practice. My life seems perfect, but beneath this exterior light, complex and dark emotions. Everything changed when a new patient entered my office. His gaze stirring long-forgotten feelings within me. This is a story of passion, temptation, and secrets gradually coming to light. Mondays have always marked the beginning of a new cycle for me. Fresh faces, new stories, and another opportunity to help someone navigate their life. But that day was different. The morning started, as usual, with a strong cup of coffee, a quick glance at my email in preparation for my first patient. I looked around my cozy office with its soft lighting and comfortable chairs. The walls were adorned with calming landscapes and soft jazz, played quietly in the corner. Everything was ready for the workday to begin. My first patient, a man named Lincoln, had scheduled an appointment a couple of days ago. His voice on the phone had an edge of caution and anxiety. The door opened, and Lincoln walked in. Tall, athletic build with deep blue eyes and short, dark hair. His gaze immediately caught my attention. There was something mysterious and attractive about him. I invited him to sit down and started with the usual questions, trying to create an atmosphere of trust. Lincoln, good morning. Give me a brief introduction. He anxiously combed through his hair and glanced at me, perhaps determining how much he could trust me, so I started attempting to read his mood. Lincoln Hale is my name. I work here, and to be honest, I was referred by a buddy. You're a great expert, he remarked. Lincoln, thank you for your confidence. Why did you come to me? After a little interval, he inhaled deeply. I've been dealing with a lot of stress and worry over the last few months. My life seems to be getting out of control. Even though I've been attempting to manage it alone, things are just getting worse. As I listened carefully, I saw that his hands were shaking a little. He was obviously in need of assistance. I know that might be really difficult. Together, let's attempt to solve it. When did these symptoms begin to affect you? Lincoln started narrating, and I lost myself in his words, experiencing both terror and agony. Every session yielded fresh insights, and I saw that our connection was developing beyond a business partnership. After a few weeks of this pattern, I began to see that Lincoln had evolved into more than simply a patient. His candor and openness stirred powerful feelings in me. I made an effort to stay away, but it was difficult. We frequently shared deep looks, and one day after another session, just as Lincoln was ready to go, he suddenly paused at the door and turned to face me. I wanted to say, Savannah, I'm very grateful to you for your help. I can now see the end of the tunnel thanks to you. His remarks had a profound effect on me. My voice betrayed me, shaking. Lincoln, even though I attempted to answer quietly. It's what I do. He nodded and then paused before adding, this might sound strange, but I feel like there's something between us, something, especially my heart skipped a beat. I'm glad I can help, he said. I didn't know what to say. The situation was becoming increasingly complicated, and I realized I was on the edge where professionalism intersected with personal feelings. Lincoln, we need to remember that we have a professional relationship, I finally said, trying to remain composed. I understand, he replied quietly, and left the office, leaving me deep in thought. Those words echoed in my mind for a long time. I tried to convince myself that it was just part of the job, that my feelings did not extend beyond professional boundaries. But each the subsequent meeting blurred that line more and more. The next session with Lincoln began with the usual calm, but now with the spark that Lincoln had dared to voice between us. Every conversation, every glance seemed to take on new meaning. I tried not to dwell on what had happened during our last meeting, but thoughts of Lincoln wouldn't leave me alone. Lincoln was sitting across from me again, talking about his problems at work and in his personal life. His voice was soft but full of hidden emotions. I looked at him, trying to focus on my professional duties, but an inner voice told me that something was amiss between us. Savannah, he began, lately, I've been reflecting about the important things in life. I've come to the realization that I want to be truthful with both myself and the people I care about. That's a very important realization, Lincoln, I said, attempting to hide my reaction to his words. He nodded, but I could see by the look in his eyes that he wanted to say more. The first step to healing is being honest with yourself. I wasn't sure I was prepared for the tough talk we were about to have, but I knew it was coming. Lincoln remained, as he did the previous time the session concluded. He gave me such a deep gaze that I felt the battle rekindle within me. He started, "Savannah, I can't remain silent any longer. I have to be honest with you, even though I know it's wrong. I feel more than simply thankfulness for you." The words lingered in the atmosphere. I searched for the appropriate words to answer, but I couldn't think of anything. Two voices fought inside of me. One advised me to be professional and keep my distance. My feelings for Lincoln were genuine and unavoidable, the other whispered. "Lincoln," I tried to remain composed as I added, "I appreciate your honesty, but we have to remember that there are boundaries we cannot cross." "I am aware," he answered softly, "but I can't help but feel this way." As I gazed at him, my heart began to race. I was aware that I may lose control of the situation if I didn't quit right now. "Let's attempt to concentrate on your recuperation and problem solving, Lincoln. That's what matters most, isn't it?" I said this in the hopes that my words would keep us both on edge. He nodded, but I could see the anguish and disappointment in his eyes. We said our goodbyes, and I was left alone in my office, feeling as though my thoughts were jumbled. I knew I had to be strong and resist giving in to my emotions, but each day got harder. The next few weeks passed into days. I tried to remain professional and not let my feelings for Lincoln get in the way of my work. But every time he walked in, my heart raced, and I could feel the tension between us growing. One evening after a difficult day, I was sitting in my office, lost in thought, and I could hear the rain pattering against the window, creating a comfortable atmosphere. The door opened abruptly, and Lincoln emerged from the entryway. "Would you mind talking to me, Savannah?" With a determined tone, he inquired. I was shocked to see that he had arrived without an appointment, even though our encounters were planned. I was suspicious of something in his tone. "Well, what happened, Lincoln?" I inquired, attempting to ascertain what had brought him here at such an odd hour. He came in and shut the door behind him, glancing at me as he stepped forward. "Savannah, I can no longer conceal my emotions. This isn't going away despite my best efforts. I can't stop myself from thinking about you every day." His remarks came as a sudden shock. I was aware that everything would be decided inside of me at this crucial time. Emotions clashed. I knew I had to answer, but I was at a loss for words. I started, "Lincoln," but he moved in closer and grabbed my hand before I could continue. "Don't say anything now, please. Let me express my feelings to you." Despite his delicate touch, he was strong and determined. He leaned in cautiously, and we shared a gentle kiss. All of my uncertainties and anxieties vanished at that instant. The kiss was lengthy and intense, and even though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't help myself. His arms encircled me, and I reacted just as strongly. Emotions surged inside of me, and I realized that there was no going back now. Everything changed at this time. When we eventually separated, Lincoln turned to face me, his eyes glimmering with passion. He said, "I want to be with you, Savannah, but I can't promise it will be easy." I was at a loss for words. I realized that this was only the beginning of our trip as a flurry of emotions raged inside of me. Everything occurred so quickly after that kiss. We could no longer hold back our feelings. Lincoln pulled me closer, and our lips met again in a passionate kiss. Every touch, every breath was filled with the desire we had been suppressing for so long. His hands slid along my back, feeling every line of my body. We merged in passionate embraces, forgetting about everything else. The office was dimly lit with only the street lights seeping through the BL lines, adding a ouch of mystery to this moment. We moved as one, every gesture instinctively filled with deep emotions. Lincoln gently lifted me and carried me to the couch. We fell onto the soft surface, never breaking away from each other. His hands were tender, yet decisive, as if he feared losing this moment. We kissed, forgetting about everything, work, boundaries, consequences. At that moment, there was only us and our desire for every touch of this felt like a wave of pleasure running through my body. I felt his hands sliding across my skin, awakening every cell within me. We were consumed by passion, losing track of time. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. Inside me burned a fire that I couldn't extinguish. We spent the entire night together, our bodies intertwined in a single rhythm. We kissed, whispered words of love and passion to each other. Lincoln was tender and caring, every touch of his making me tremble with pleasure. I gave myself over to every moment, responding with equal ferocity. We were cuddled up on the couch in the morning, and the light coming through the blinds lit up our contented yet exhausted faces. Even though I knew we had broken the law, I didn't care at the time. More than ever, I felt alive. Lincoln's eyes were beaming with joy as he gazed at me. He touched my cheek and murmured, "Savannah, I'm glad we're together, even though I don't know what will happen next." I grinned as I felt his words pierce my heart. We were prepared to take on this task, even though we knew that everything would change suddenly. "I am too, Lincoln, but we need to be careful. We have to decide how we'll move forward," I replied, trying to be realistic. We both understood that difficulties lay ahead. Our relationship violated all professional and moral boundaries. But at that moment, we couldn't think of anything but our love. The next few days passed in a fog. We continued to meet in my office, trying to act as usual, but now every glance, every touch, carried special meaning. We tried not to attract attention, but our feelings were impossible to hide. One evening, after an especially tense day, I received a message from Lincoln. "I need to talk. Can we meet at our place?" I knew he meant the small park on the outskirts of the city where we had met several times outside of work. It was our secret place where we could be ourselves. When I arrived at the park, Lincoln was already waiting for me on a bench surrounded by blooming bushes. His face was serious, and I felt a rising anxiety within me. "Savannah," he began as I approached, "I can't hide our relationship any longer. I want us to be together openly." His words were like a thunderbolt. On a clear day, I didn't know how to react. On one hand, I wanted the same, but on the other hand, I understood that it could destroy everything we had built. "Lincoln, it's too risky. We could lose everything. Our jobs, our reputations," I said, trying to be rational. "I know," he replied, taking my hand, "but I can't live in fear anymore. I love you, Savannah, and I want to be with you no matter what." His words touched me deeply. I knew he was right. We couldn't hide forever, but how could we find a right path in this complicated situation? We talked about a long time, discussing our feelings and the possible consequences. Lincoln was ready to take any risk for our love, and that gave me strength. I understood that a difficult path lay ahead, but I was ready to walk it with him. Our relationship reached a new level. We became more open with each other, sharing our fears and hopes every day. Were filled with passion and love, but also with the awareness that we would have to fight for our happiness. We knew that challenges awaited us, but we were ready to face them together. Our feelings were stronger than any obstacles, and we believed that we could overcome any difficulties. After that night, when my relationship with Lincoln crossed the line of what was permissible, I knew I had to make the most important decision of my life. The question of whom to choose: my husband, with whom I'd spent many years, or Lincoln, who awakened long-forgotten feelings and passion in me. Every morning, I woke up thinking about the choice I had to make. Deep down, I understood that I could no longer live a double life. Lincoln had become more than just a patient to me. He was someone I wanted to be with, but thoughts of my husband, our life together, and all the memories we had created tormented me. One morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in my hands, I decided that I could no longer postpone this decision. I had to talk to my husband and tell him the truth. My heart pounded in my chest, and my hands trembled with anxiety. I knew this conversation would change everything. When my husband returned from work, I asked him to sit down and talk. He looked at me with concern, sensing that something was wrong. "Daniel, I need to tell you something very important." I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've had good years together, and I will always be grateful to you for that. But I need to be honest with you. I have an affair." His eyes widened with surprise and pain. He looked at me, not believing his ears. "What are you saying, Savannah? You've been cheating on me." His voice shook with rage and disappointment. "Yes, and I understand that it's terrible. I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't live a lie any longer," I replied, feeling tears well up in my eyes. "Who is he?" Daniel asked, his face pale with anger. "His name is Lincoln. He was my patient." I confessed, knowing that things would only get worse. "Now, patient, Are you serious? You're not only cheating on me, but also breaking all ethical norms. Daniel stood up, his eyes blazing with fury. Get out of my house. I can't see you anymore. I knew I deserved his anger and silently gathered my things. At that moment, it felt like my world was falling apart. I had lost not only my husband, but also the home that had been a safe place for me. When I walked out of the house with a suitcase in hand, I didn't have a specific plan. I got in the car and drove to Lincoln, my heart clenched with fear and anxiety. I didn't know how he would react to my news when I arrived at his house. He was already waiting for me on the porch. I got out of the car, and he immediately approached me, hugging me tightly, saving what happened. He asked, sensing that I was in a state of shock. I told Daniel everything. I replied, my words trembling. He kicked me out of the house and filed for divorce. Lincoln listened silently, his eyes expressing sympathy and support. You made a very difficult decision, and I'm proud of you for it. We'll get through this together, he said, hugging me even tighter. We went into his house, and he helped me settle in. At that moment, I knew I had made the right choice despite all the difficulties. Lincoln was the person I wanted to be with us. We spent that evening together, discussing our future plans and what lay ahead. The next day, I began a new chapter of my life, Lincoln, and I decided that we needed to be on open despite all the challenges. I knew that a tough road lay ahead, but I was ready to walk it with him. My divorce from Daniel was difficult and painful. He was unable to forgive me for the betrayal and breach of trust. It was like a slow tooth extraction, painful and exhausting, but Lincoln helped me through all of these trials. He was there when I felt especially vulnerable and always knew how to lift my spirits in our relationship, which grew even stronger, and we learned to trust each other on a new level. The process lasted several months, each filled with emotional turmoil and stress. We divided property, dealt with mutual friends, and navigated our past life together. One evening, while sitting on the couch in Lincoln's arms, I realized that despite all the losses and pain, I had found what I was looking for. Now, under the layers of habit and responsibilities, I discovered passion and love. Now we had the opportunity to build a new life together, free from lies and deception. We decided to be honest and open in our relationship. We no longer wanted to hide our feelings or live in fear. We wanted to be together, no matter what. This path was not easy, but we knew it was worth it. Thus began a new chapter of our lives, full of challenges, but also hopes for a bright future. Several months had passed since my life had changed forever after the divorce from Daniel was finalized, and I moved in with Lincoln. Despite all the difficulties we had to endure, Lincoln and I had grown even closer. Our love had been tested, and now we look to the future with hope and confidence. One quiet morning, I woke up in Lincoln's arms. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, filling our bedroom with a soft glow. I turned to him and saw him smiling at me. Good morning, I whispered, snuggling closer to his chest. Good morning, my love, he replied, kissing me gently on the forehead. These simple moments had become priceless to us. We cherished each day, spending time together, getting to know each other better, and better. Our lives were filled with meaning and happiness we hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I had finally found my place in life when, one evening, while sitting on a bench in the park, Lincoln took my hand and gazed into my eyes. Savannah. We frequently strolled through the park where we first opened up to one another. It had become a special place, a symbol of our love and new beginnings. We talked about our dreams and goals, planned our future, and Lincoln supported me in everything. You have become both my best friend and my love, and I want to be with you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? I'm prepared to face any difficulty as long as you're at my side. In that moment, I realized that all of our efforts and suffering had not been in vain. My heart was bursting with excitement and joy. I knew that our journey had not been easy, but every challenge had only strengthened our love. Yes, Lincoln, I will, I replied, unable to contain my tears of happiness. We embraced, and I felt his heart beat in time with mine. Nothing could ever separate us now that we had found each other in this complex world. Our wedding was small and unassuming, but it was full of love and joy. We started a new chapter in our lives together, surrounded by only our closest friends and family. And each day spent with Lincoln was full of joy and significance. We learned to cherish every moment we had together and our love grew stronger. We also knew that we could overcome any challenges together.